Dear Apple, I love your products. I use an iPhone as my main phone. I use an iPad I use a Mac to edit these videos. You get the idea, I'm in the whole Apple ecosystem. But I'm just straight up disappointed lately. The iPhone is far from being perfect as it used to be. The iPad is nowhere near being a laptop killer. The Mac lineup is solid, but it's flawed. I love these products and I want to see them improve, which is why I'm making this video. There are 6 problems within Apple's hardware and software, so I'm going to be talking about how they can fix them to improve their products. Let's start with number 6. Why do we have a 60Hz display on the iPhone 16 in 2024? Why? Now, a lot of people don't really notice 120Hz and I can agree to that. But every phone at $800 has a 120Hz display. Heck, even phones that are less than $300 have one. And if people don't notice it, it shouldn't be there on the Pro models. I can understand when the iPhone 13 Pro got 120Hz and the base model didn't. But it's 2024. Every phone needs it and it improves the overall experience. Let's see this in another point of view. I care about high refresh rate on my phone, but I don't want to splurge out and buy the Pro iPhone for it, since I don't need the extra cameras, extra features, or even the titanium build. I was literally in this situation where the iPhone 16 is perfect for my needs, but Apple kneecapped it by giving it a 60Hz display. Now, a lot of people would also point out that it's the only major difference between the base and Pro iPhone. Yeah, but no other manufacturer is doing this. The Galaxy S24 has a 120Hz display like the S24 Ultra. The Pixel 9 has a 120Hz display like the Pixel 9 Pro. Coming back to the iPhone, there are more differences between the base and Pro model iPhones than just the 120Hz display. And even if the base model gets it, they can easily differentiate the Pro model a lot more. I honestly don't think this is a feature they need to gatekeep for the Pro model iPhones because it's a Pro feature. There are rumors that the base model is getting 120Hz in 2025. And the base model iPhone is not the only product that is suffering from the 60Hz dilemma. Even the iPad Air still has a 60Hz display for some reason. And in the case of the iPad, it doesn't make a difference for day-to-day tasks. But the moment you use the Apple Pencil, you're going to start noticing the latency differences between the iPad Air and iPad Pro. And high refresh rate has been on the iPad since 2017. Why is high refresh rate only there on Pro models? Like, why? Number 5. Why are there so many iPhones? There's the iPhone SE, iPhone 14, 14 Plus, 15, 15 Plus, 16, 16 Plus, 16 Pro and 16 Pro Max. 9 iPhones. Huh? You might think that this is fine and there's a lot more options for a person to choose from. Nope, it just makes the whole lineup confusing. Let's say I want to buy the iPhone 14 Plus. It's currently $699, but why would I buy the 14 Plus when the iPhone 15 is also $699? And it has a lot of improvements over the iPhone 14 Plus. But let's say I want the Plus model, so why would I buy the iPhone 15 Plus when the iPhone 16 is the same price as the iPhone 15 Plus? This would go on for a while and you would end up buying the iPhone 16 Pro Max for $1,200. Wow. And why does the 3rd gen iPhone SE still exist in 2024? It's a decade-old design. The iPhone lineup is currently going through what the iPad lineup used to go through a year ago, where there was a clear pricing ladder to make you spend more for no reason. But it's also pretty obvious at this point that the 4th iPhone model, the Plus or Mini, isn't really working for Apple. Every year, the 4th model iPhone sells less compared to the other models in the lineup. Why do we have 4 new iPhones every single year? And apparently, Apple is killing off the Plus model next year and replacing it with an Air model, which would probably have a single rear camera and the defining characteristic being its thinness. What? So basically the iPhone 16, 16 Plus and the 17 would be better than the iPhone 17 Air in terms of camera. And I can bet that this model would be priced higher than the base iPhone 17. This should be the iPhone SE Plus if it's gonna have a single rear camera. I am so confused of its purpose in the lineup. Can we please go back to 2019 where we just had 3 new iPhone models, with each being priced properly and with actual differentiating factors? And that brings me over to my next problem. Does Apple even believe in depreciation? Let's take that iPhone SE. It started at $429 in early 2022. But it's December 2024 and that iPhone still costs $429. What? I really hope no one's paying full price for that phone. But that's not even the worst part. Let's take the new M4 Mac Mini. The base model costs $599. It comes with 16 gigs of RAM and 256 gigs of storage. Before I start ranting, let's appreciate that every single Mac now starts with 16 gigs of RAM by default. Yay! But wait, why does it cost $200 to go from 256 to 512 gigs of storage on the Mac? $200. And why does it cost $400 to go from 16 gigs of RAM to 32 gigs of RAM? Like, how? At this point, you can buy 2 base model Mac Minis and it would cost the same as buying one with 32 gigs of RAM and 512 gigs of storage. Seriously, what? And this is a problem with every single Mac. At their base price, they are great. But the moment you upgrade RAM or storage, they are just overpriced. I can kinda excuse the RAM prices cause they're on the chip itself, but I can get a good quality 2 2TB PCI Gen 4 SSD for less than how much it costs to go from 256 to 512 gigs of storage. And Apple's SSDs aren't special either. That 2TB drive is 2.5 times faster than the SSD on the base model Mac Mini. And you can't even upgrade the SSDs on the Macs down the line. It is either sorted down to the logic board or some proprietary module. SSDs are the one component that can easily fail on a computer. So if your SSD dies, RIP to your Mac.
Wow.
You know what's funny? These were the same prices Apple was charging a decade ago. And at that time, it was reasonable. But SSDs have gotten so cheap. Yeah, Apple doesn't believe in depreciation, but it doesn't stop there. Take the Studio Display. It costs $15.99 for just a 5K display with speakers and webcam. But guess how much a 5K iMac used to cost in 2020? $17.99. And that came with a whole computer. We are paying $15.99 for just a monitor in 2024. I think Apple believes in inflation more than depreciation. These RAM and SSD upgrade prices should be half the cost to be reasonable. And that Studio Display should be $9.99, not $15.99. Now that's all the problems I have with hardware, but it's time to talk about software cause things are gonna get worse. Time to spill some tea. But you know what would be great? A sub to this channel. Let me finish my tea. What is up with iPadOS? For the last few years, iPads have gotten really powerful. We have that M4 chip from the Mac Mini or MacBook Pro on the iPad Pro. Apple always talks about it being a laptop killer, but iPadOS is really holding it back. Now, before I start, we don't need macOS on the iPad. It's a desktop operating system that is optimized for pure mouse and keyboard input. We have to keep in mind that the iPad is more like a two-in-one device, where every function should be possible through both a touchscreen and a keyboard. The apps on iPadOS are great, but they're being held back by the core fundamental problems of iOS. It is no secret that iPadOS is just iOS with some multitasking features. Now, Apple has added some desktop-centric features to iPadOS, but they need to free it from the issues that have plagued iOS for so long. Issues that are unacceptable with a real computer operating system. Why can't the iPad do tasks in the background? Let's say I'm exporting a video on Final Cut Pro for iPad and I want to open the Notes app. The iPad will literally cancel the export since it's not the main program. This is definitely not a performance problem because a Mac can do this. Why not the iPad? Why can't I play two different audio streams on iPadOS? Why can't I download third-party app stores regardless of my region? Why can't I truly multitask with a second display? I can go on for a while, but these are issues you can ignore on a phone, not on a device which claims that can replace your laptop. The best solution would be to break off from the iOS codebase and build iPadOS from the ground up with desktop-centric features in mind, rather than giving us a new way to multitask. Enough about iPadOS, let's get to the new kid in the block. Apple Intelligence. I've talked about this so many times, but why aren't older iPhones getting Apple Intelligence? They clearly have the hardware to support it apart from not having enough RAM. But why can't they restrict a few features to new devices and just bring the core experiences to everyone? They made phones like the iPhone 15 instantly obsolete because Apple claims that Apple Intelligence is the next big thing. The iPhone 15 released alongside the iPhone 15 Pro, but only the 15 Pro gets all of the Apple Intelligence features. Why? But also, what is up with the rollout of these features? Apple announced it in June at WWDC 2024. We got the first beta of Apple Intelligence in July, and Apple spent a lot of time talking about Apple Intelligence in the September iPhone keynote. But you had to wait till the end of October to even use Apple Intelligence on your shiny new iPhone 16. Most of it wasn't even the features that Apple heavily advertised. Then you had to wait till December to even get the second wave of features. And now you need to wait till March 2025 for the new Siri with personal context. 7 months for the whole set of features that they heavily advertised in the September Apple keynote. What? It is so clear that Apple Intelligence was the last minute thing that Apple rushed in response to Galaxy AI or Gemini. All of this could have just come out with iOS 19 in 2025 instead of postponing them this year. I don't really have a problem with Apple talking about Apple Intelligence in September. They've done this in the past where they talk about a new feature that won't be out for a few months, but they never advertise them to the moon until they're out. Everywhere you go, the first thing you see about the new iPhone is Hello Apple Intelligence, nothing else. Even now with Apple Intelligence, you would assume that the new Siri animations come with the new Siri, but the new Siri won't be out till March 2025. Apple has clearly deceived the general public with Apple Intelligence and also killed the hype for it since the rollout has been so staggered. Just give us everything with one update. But here's my number one problem, one that every iPhone user can relate to. What is up with iOS? And I'm not going to complain about the features iOS lacks in comparison to Android. No, my problems with the overall user experience, which has been terrible for the last 3 years. We have gotten a lot of features that were there in Android for ages with recent iOS versions. But all of this was at the cost of affecting the overall stability. With every major iOS release lately, the first 6 to 8 months are just terrible. Apple will fix a few bugs with an update and there will be a new bug that'll pop up. It is just an endless cycle of bugs.
Wow.
Here are a few bugs that are there there in iOS 18.2. For some reason, the colors keep on shifting across the operating system. This has been a bug since iOS 18.1. Apple Intelligence literally disappears sometimes. And somehow my keyboard disappears when I want to type. The only solution is to restart my phone. It's like the average user is daily driving a beta at this point. That's how terrible it is. I chose an iPhone for its stable experience, not for the bugs. People buy iPhones for their reliability. But even brand new phones ship with a bunch of bugs. iOS used to be stable, but ever since iOS 16, it's just a mess. It's high time that we get a new major iOS release with zero new features. Just work on fixing the bugs, improve the current set of features, make every device faster and more reliable. That's all we need. This has been done in the past. iOS 12 just focused on improving performance and stability across every device. A lot of Apple fans would also bring up OS X Snow Leopard, which famously brought zero new features but refined the overall experience for every single Mac. iOS needs a stability update more than ever. We don't need a new way to make emojis or customize our phones. We just want a stable update from the get-go. I really hope Apple listens to all the criticism about iOS 16, 17, 18 and just works on improving the overall experience with iOS 19. Alright, that's about it. This is the last video for 2024 and I'm really excited for 2025. I have a lot of interesting videos planned out, so until then, watch this video to see how I suffered with a BlackBerry.